Every school is this incredibly complex living system. And just like any system, it really needs a regular health check to make sure it's actually working for every single student. Today, we're going to look at a super powerful tool for that exact checkup, the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, or TFI, and specifically, its latest and greatest upgrade, version 3.0. So let me just ask you this. How do you really know if the support systems you have in place at your school are doing what they're supposed to do? Are you just kind of going with your gut, maybe some stories you've heard, or are you using a precise, data-driven tool to actually measure your impact? Well, that's the exact problem the TFI was designed to solve. All right, let's dive right in. The best way to think about the TFI is like a vital instrument, almost like a blood pressure cuff for your school's entire culture. It doesn't just guess, right? It gives you a real measurement of the health and the strength of your support systems. Okay, so what is it officially? Well, the TFI 3.0 manual defines it as a measure of how well, and that's the key word, how well, school staff are applying the core features of PBIS, positive behavioral interventions and supports. This is not just another checklist, folks. It's a research-backed tool that's built to guide real, lasting improvement in schools. And that right there is the most important part. It's one thing to have a support plan written down somewhere in a binder, but it's a completely different thing to implement it with fidelity, with real quality and consistency. That's what actually gets results for students. And the TFI, it's built to measure that exact quality of implementation. So to really get a handle on the TFI, we first have to understand the framework it's built on. It's this really smart, multi-layered system that's designed to give every student the right level of support at the right time. It all starts with Tier 1. That's the foundation, the universal supports that are there for absolutely everyone. Then, for some students who might need a little extra help, you have Tier 2, which provides more targeted interventions. And finally, for a few students with the most intensive needs, there's Tier 3, which offers really deep, individualized support. So let's take a peek inside and see how the TFI actually measures each of these tiers. It looks at really specific things, from how you establish school-wide expectations in Tier 1, to whether you have clear decision rules for interventions in Tier 2, all the way up to detailed protocols for individual support plans in Tier 3. Oh, and did you notice that common thread running through all of them? Family engagement. It's a key piece of the puzzle at every single level. Now, the TFII has been around for a while, so you might be wondering, why the big update to version 3.0? Well, let me tell you, this wasn't just a fresh coat of paint. These changes were driven by a really clear and, frankly, urgent purpose. This quote from the creators at the Center on PBIS really hits the nail on the head. They say it flat out. They revised the TFI to prioritize 3 absolutely critical areas in our schools today: mental health, equity, and what's happening in the classroom. First up, equity. This update really pushes schools to ask a much deeper question. It's not just, do we have supports, but are our supports accessible? Are they culturally responsive? And are they effective for every single student group, especially those who've been historically marginalized? Second, mental health. TFI 3.0 makes it explicit. You have to integrate mental health with social, emotional, and behavioral support. It really recognizes that you just can't separate a student's behavior from their well-being. They're two sides of the very same coin. And third, a laser focus on the classroom. The new version really doubles down on the classroom environment, which, when you think about it, makes perfect sense. That's where our students spend most of their day, and that's where these support practices can have the most direct, powerful impact. Okay, so that's the big picture philosophy. But what do these changes actually look like on the ground, in practice? Let's put the old version side by side with the new one and see what's different. Here's a perfect example from Tier 1. The old version had just one item for involvement. Now look at 3.0. It's been expanded into 3 separate, distinct items for faculty, student, and family engagement. Now, that little shift in language from involvement to engagement, that's huge. Involvement can be passive, but engagement, that means you're actively co-designing the school's systems with everyone who has a stake in them. And guess what? We see that same pattern in Tier 2. What used to be a kind of broad item about matching practices to student need has become a much more precise requirement for having written decision rules. And look, just like in Tier 1, there are now brand new, specific items for student and family engagement at this targeted level too. And finally, when we get to Tier 3, the whole focus shifts from just having individual plan components to having system-level protocols. So instead of just looking at the different parts of a plan, version 3.0 asks if the school has a whole documented protocol for how they do assessments and support planning. This really elevates the whole process from a simple checklist to a cohesive, team-driven system.
So you've done all the work, you've completed the inventory, and you've got your scores. Now what? Well, this is where the TFI really shows its true power. See, it was never about getting a grade or being judged. It's all about creating a roadmap for getting better.
The TFII is meant to be used again and again, so a school can actually see its progress over time. This chart shows it perfectly. The goal isn't to get a perfect score on day one. It's about the journey of continuous growth, seeing yourself go from 45% to 68% and then up to 85% fidelity. It's about celebrating that progress along the way.
And here is exactly how that growth happens. Your TFI results are designed to feed directly into a really concrete action plan. So if your school scores low on family engagement, for example, the plan doesn't just say, get better. No, it assigns a specific action, like form a family advisory group, to a specific person with a clear deadline. It's practical.
So, when it's all said and done, what's the big takeaway? It's this. The TFI is a practical, powerful tool that builds a bridge between assessment and action. It literally turns your data into a clear, actionable roadmap that any school team can pick up and follow.
Look, this isn't just theory. It's a real call to action. The TFI gives you the map and it gives you the compass. So the only question that's left is for you and your team. What's the very first step your school is going to take on that journey?